Okay, and we're back. I was hoping to have a better camera setup, better lighting setup, better OBS setup today, but it's gonna have to wait. I tried. I don't have the right cord. I have a million cords and not the right one. Uh, Apple switched to this, USB-C cable now, and everybody's switching to the USB-C cable, and now every other cable is useless. But my MacBook Air doesn't have a USB-C cable. That's how it goes. But I'm going to order one on Amazon tomorrow. Should have a better like OBS interface. I've spoken to you guys before about how I'm trying to minimize the whole this business. You know what I'm talking about. This. So uh, hopefully that will be gone tomorrow. But I wanted to talk today about uh, the field of a theory of everything because last night I had a discussion with uh, some people on Clubhouse, and I will post the link in the comments below. I forgot to post it, but here, but uh, I want to try and have a Clubhouse discussion on the new Theory of Everyone Club every Monday at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I was, having the discussion on here. Don't really want to do that anymore. Would rather go on Clubhouse, or if we can't get that to work very well, then Instagram. But last night was a great conversation, actually. Uh, just saying hello. But it was a small number of people, but it was really engaged people, and we had really deep discussions about, uh, all different aspects of theory of everything. We had, a uh, a um, biologist drop by. We had, I think he also studies or astrobiology, which there is no biology to space, like I don't understand how that's a field. Like it's not a field. There's no astrobiology like right now. Like it's just it's more theoretical than like any other field. But he was also a biologist, and or he's going for his PhD or his master's, and he added a lot to the discussion. We had some of the more engaged people in the Theory of Everyone community participating as well. We had Phantom helping me mod the room, which is very helpful. Still learning how to do the whole like Clubhouse thing, but follow me on Clubhouse and join the Theory of Everyone club on Clubhouse, because you can engage in real time conversation with me on Monday nights at 9 p.m. and it doesn't have to be through the chat here. So I think that would be a good time. And I also foresee it growing really quickly. Clubhouse is cool. It's you got to be aware of not talking over each other, and like something that I guess you just get used to. And you got to figure out how to like grow the room. But it's a good platform. I think it's good to hear people's voices. It like brings our humanity back a little bit. Now, like you're hearing my voice, but that's pretty much it. I don't hear your voice on here, but on Clubhouse I can hear your voice, and we can uh, get into topics that are too detailed to write into the comment section. What is my academic background? Walt. Welcome, Walt. By the way, I know that I abandoned our conversation, Walt, in the Discord, in your Discord, but it wasn't purposeful. Eventually, I do plan on getting back to it, but I'm getting married in like 2 weeks, and I have a full-time job too, and I do this. I stream every Tuesday and Wednesday on here, and then I stream on Mondays. So, and then I do a Discord call on my Discord at 7 p.m. Pacific time every Thursday. So it's my schedule is kind of crazy, and that conversation was just going on and on. But I do plan on having a voice conversation with you because I said that I would. My academic background is in finance and biology, but my professional background is in marketing and data analytics. So, but I mean, I have studied biology my entire life. So, thank you. But yeah, it's hectic. It's very hectic. But it's good. So after that, things will calm down a little bit, and then we can have our Discord discussion. But welcome to the live stream. But I wanted to talk about a theory of everything and about the field necessary to the theory of everything tonight. Because last night I was speaking to the biologist, I think he's also studying physics, and I asked him essentially, do you think that physics is really the field necessary to understanding the theory of everything? And is it the only path? Because if it's really the theory of everything, then it transcends fields. It is the theory of objectivity in music and in mathematics and in physics and in biology and in chemistry and in politics and in morality. And in even theology and I mean sociology. It goes across the board. It's not just restricted to uniting quantum mechanics and general relativity, even though the structure that unites quantum mechanics and general relativity is pretty much, as I've said before, it is very close to the theory of everything, essentially. But until you contextualize it in the context of everything, it's not really a theory of everything. So, and spoken on here a little bit about music and how music is probably closer to a theory of everything than almost anything else, because it is the most universal form of communication that we know of, because it communicates emotions without any words, and you doesn't matter what culture you're part of, essentially you can pick up on the mood of a song or of a musical I guess verse. I mean, I don't really know music, I'm still learning, but I do predict that it's going to be like the closest thing to a theory of everything out of the fields that do exist. Now, we can make a field that doesn't yet exist and that probably used to exist, which was metaphysics, but we're going to have to rename it because there's too much stigma attached to that. Or maybe we could take it back. I don't really know. But calling the theory of everything a meta-theory, a meta-biological theory, a meta-mathematical theory, a metaphysical theory, a meta-sociological theory, a meta-moral theory. Like, I think that this is probably the best route to go, is you could just call it a meta-theory. And I think Chris Langan also says this. It's like essentially about his theory, the CTMU. And I've noticed that there is this issue of credentials, where if you don't have the accepted credentials of a PhD in mathematics or physics, they're not taken seriously in this field. But the thing is that if that was the actual path to a theory of everything, then we would have already had a theory of everything. But it's not, clearly, the path, and that's because, like every other field that we currently have, it's stuck in relativity, and aka subjectivity. So if it's stuck in relativity and objectivity, then it's almost as far from the theory of everything as anything else. It just might be easier to relate to a theory of everything because of just how it's structured right now, and it's based. People will say, someone said this last night on the Clubhouse, that physics is applied mathematics and chemistry is is applied physics, and biology is applied chemistry, and so on and so forth. But I basically have stated that essentially mathematics is applied philosophy, and this is a very important thing to realize, I think, is that if there is a theory of everything field, it's really metaphysics, but if we have to use a field that kind of already exists, it's going to be philosophy. But the issue with philosophy, like everything else, is that it is also stuck in relativity, because there's just endless philosophical theories and books, and people will have said to me, people were sending me messages, they were like, it's clear you haven't read any feminist literature, or else you would not say what you have said about like your definition of feminism. And there are endless books about philosophy topics, I guess you could say, but we need like a metaphilosophy that is objective philosophy. And philosophy is supposed to be the study of perspective. It's kind of just like, thinking at this point almost, but it's meant to be the study of perspective. And what's interesting is that that was what my philosophy professor told me in college, and it's probably the most important thing that stuck with me from that class. And that's essential because the foundation of sentient singularity theory is the four primary perspectives of inside, outside, separate, and oneness. And this is how you orient yourself without relativistic metrics like bigger, stronger, faster. My nose is itching. I need to trim my beard. I got a haircut. I don't know if anybody noticed. I don't expect you to, but I did. I have not trimmed my beard up yet, and it's just like out of control. But this is going to be the foundation of objective philosophy, or metaphilosophy, is essentially this, as I've shared before. Whoa. Like I said, tomorrow, guys, have a trim beard, have, better OBS here. I'll know if YouTube cuts my stream again, but this is going to go on to be the foundation of pretty much any meta theory, or objective philosophy, you could call it. And I've spoken a lot about them. They're just how you orient yourself in a lineage structure when you don't have space or time yet. So you just have relationships within multiplicity, but you don't have space or time. So this is how you do it, how you orient yourself outside of space or time. And that means you can't have speed or strength or size or anything. So like you need just words that describe one quantity's relationship to another, essentially. You see, I just did see there was some comments. I'm gonna try and keep track of the comments a little bit, because sometimes YouTube cuts my stream because I say things they don't like. Metaphysics is here to stay. Metaphysics is a thing exploring some of the questions you're asking with Carnap. Metaphysics. Metaphysics. That's like below metaphysics. You're asking with Carnap, Quine, Fine, McDonald, Van, etc. I don't know any of those people, but I appreciate the comment. Maybe you can elaborate, but I don't know those people. C. Sider's writing of the Book of the World. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Is there like a Wikipedia? Okay. Let's see. The Oxford University Press. In order to perfectly describe the world, it is not enough to speak truly. One must also use the right concepts, including the right logical concepts. One must use concepts that carve at the joints that give the world's structure. Yes, 100% agree with that. There is an objectively correct way to write the book of the world. I would 100% agree with that. Like, that is a great way to put it. I do like that way of putting it. Metaphysics, as traditionally conceived, is about the fundamental nature of reality. In the present terms, metaphysics is about the world's structure. Yes, it is. Metaphysics, inquiry into the status of metaphysical questions, turns on structure. The question of whether ontological, causal, or causal or modal questions are substantive is in large part a question of whether the world has ontological, causal, and modal structure. Oh my gosh, we're going to talk about this. Whether quantifiers, causal relations, and modal operators carve at the joints. 100% agree with that. That was great. Walt, I appreciate that because I was discussing this actually with somebody yesterday. So this work, you can boil down this work into 4 models that are the most important models. So you boil it down into essentially duplicate. Okay, so duplicated this, and guess we're gonna go here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and essentially 4. Now there's more to it than this, and some of them, this is kind of encompassing multiple models, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and there we go. So this is just a model that's of basically like a singular unit. It is the monad. It is existence itself as a sentient being, and it perceives its world via the 4 primary perspectives of inside, outside, separate, and oneness. Inside is separate and oneness. Outside is separate from oneness. Separate is outside of oneness. And oneness is outside of separateness. So from here, you get these. In order to achieve self-awareness, you need these 4 primary perspectives. From there, you get this, which is the calculating quantum of consciousness model that I have. That basically is, it's the model of matter, essentially. And It's not the model of matter. It's the model, it's the math. This is the mathematical answer to the hard problem of consciousness. That's what it is. I mean, that sounds like a profound statement, but like it's profound work. But that's what this is essentially. It's a simplistic model of the math of the hard problem of consciousness, which it's not that hard of a problem, but or it's just the mathematical structure of a consciousness. And what's interesting about what we looked at in the book of the world is that they basically said that you need, was it? You need causal, modal, and ontological structure. And you also need quantifiers, I guess you could say causal relationships, or you could just say causality. And then you have modal operators. Okay, so just saying operators. So what I was speaking to somebody about yesterday was that in this work, well, it's everything is important. Okay, so the math is important. The quantities or the count of the cells in the structure is important. And the structure of the structure is important. Like here, this is all calculative, and it is very important, the math that's in here, and the structure that it is contained within, and the quantity of the cells that make up the structure that it is contained within. So this is unlike anything else that is currently done in this, I guess, medium of using Excel like this. So normally you can do Excel in all these different ways, and you can make all these different, charts and things like that. And you can do that with this kind of stuff, with this work too. But when you're trying to model structure, you can't. It is essential that it is set up exactly like this, and exactly like this, and exactly like this, even though this one isn't even calculative yet. Maybe we can work on that tonight. But maybe there is actually a way to do that I just have been ignoring. I'm sure there is, but I've been ignoring it. Essentially, it would be, so it would be, inside would be three, and outside would be, so basically, I don't know why I'm doing this. You would start with 1. What is going on? 1 bit of information, and it would need to essentially, it doesn't really calculate, though. That's the issue with this, why I've never done it, is it's not like the quantum of consciousness. It's basically just a circle. It's not really calculating. It's because at the end of the day, what is perceived is you. And that's basically it. But like, it's really in this structure that that happens. But what's happening is essentially so as you can see here, this is 4 primary perspectives. You move it up, and the sum, or the values, not the sum, of the next model up is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, even though it's a 9 cell structure, it has a sum, an interior sum of 19. When you move that up a level to here, it's 2 19 by 19 squares. So that's where the symmetry continues, and there's lots of places that the symmetry continues, but essentially what was the count previously becomes sum, and what was the sum becomes the count, and so there is this, like, I guess the right way to put it mathematically is like it's almost the objective expression of orthogonal, which is essentially this orthogonal. Orthogonal is of or involving right angles, or, at right angles. So orthogonal is like when two things are perpendicular, or but it's like meta-perpendicular. It's not really perpendicular. It's like meta-perpendicular. It's different. But it says intersecting or lying at right angles in orthogonal cutting. The cutting edge is perpendicular to the direction of the tool travel, having perpendicular slopes or tangents at the point of intersecting orthogonal curves. It's basically the objective expression of orthogonal. Don't forget joint carving. Next time you and I get a chance to talk, I can describe this stuff in more detail, and maybe it can help you with your development of this. That would be awesome. What is joint carving? It sounds like it's just where things change. So is this joint carving where it's like a joint? I'm gonna look it up. It's change of direction. Reflections on the metaphysics and epistemology of classification of a distinguished group of philosophers. What is joint carving? Carve nature and its joints. Yeah, this is exactly what this is. It's the periodicity of sentience, I think. It is nature and its joints. But it's the periodicity of sentience, essentially. And everywhere that manifests, on a cosmological level and on a holonic level. It's basically where you can separate things. Like where's the point of movement where there is the ability for change and individuation, I guess you could say, or like articulation or sovereignty almost, and where there is a separation. That's what it seems like to me, which is the periodicity of sentience, which is basically Bott periodicity in mathematics, I think. Objective perspective of orthogonal is related to what? Why stop at 720? Why not? Couldn't it be bigger? There's lots of reasons why you would stop at 720. So, one, the fermions in the standard model go through 720 degrees of rotation before they come back to their original position. So they basically do a double 360, but that's because essentially the universe is looking at itself from the inside out, which is one 360, and the outside in, which is another 360. So think about it like this. Like, imagine you are a floating head in a room, and you need to see every part of that room. In order to do that, you rotate 360 degrees and you see all four walls, but then you still need to see the floor and the ceiling, and in order to do that, you rotate 360 vertically to see the floor and the ceiling. So you basically to see really hierarchy is really what this is seeing, but I mean in space-time it's up and down, but in objectivity and the theory of everything, it's hierarchy that you're perceiving, and also like preceding and succeeding level generations in a lineage. Like, so to look forwards towards your children and backwards towards your ancestors is to look up and down. But then to look around would be to look at your siblings and your spouse and your friends and things like that. So, but this is 720 degrees, and it's comes from essentially the fact that the universe is looking in from the outside. So basically, existence is looking in at us, and I mean that literally, and we are looking out at it, and I mean that literally too. Obviously, we are looking out at the universe, and we try and understand it looking out, but it observes us by looking in, because it can't look out. There is no out for existence. There's just in. Because there's nothing beyond existence, so it can only look within. It can't look without. But we can look without, and it can look within. And this crossing that happens is what creates the 8 periods in Bott periodicity, which is the overlapping of 4. So you can see that kind of like in what I think is a model of Eric Weinstein's Observerse here, and it kind of just describes relationships. And so if you think about this yellow as you and me, and then this green as the universe, so we below here is actually inside of this green. So this is the universe, and this is you and me. Both of them are sentient beings, just assume for the sake of understanding the model, because that's what the model is assuming. There's below 4-dimensional space-time. It's not length. Length, width, height, and time is not fundamental. Okay, because you're stuck in relativity if you have length, width, and height. And time, even. So, but if you want to get a little bit below that, you actually reorient spatial maneuvering centered around yourself, because one of the things that I asked myself with this work before I even got started years ago was, in order to start from first principles, I had to figure out what is the most, where do I start? What is the foundation that I can assume and build from? And so I asked myself this question of, what is the truest thing that I know? The truest thing that I know is that I exist. So you have to orient it around you, not around the dresser. If you're doing length, width, height of a dresser, you're literally structuring space-time around a dresser and calling it fundamental, as if like the dresser deserves to define the universe. You are the truest thing that you know, not the existence of a dresser. And so you orient it around you. And it's oriented around a goal. So it's not actually 4 dimensions. You could call it 4 dimensions, but it's really 2 degrees of freedom and 2 constraints. So 1 degree of freedom, or the positive degree of freedom, is forwards towards a new location. Like if you want to go to Chick-fil-A and you haven't been there, forwards towards a new location. location is 1 degree of freedom. It's forwards towards Chick-fil-A. Or backwards towards a previous location is a negative degree of freedom, which is, backing up, abandoning the trip to Chick-fil-A and going back to, your house. And then the subjective constraint is defined by you, and it is your current location. And you're always in your current location. And your new location and your previous location are reflecting across your current location. You can never escape your current location. You're always in your current location. So it's a constraint, and it is a subjective constraint because it is defined by you, not your environment. So you have 2 degrees of freedom, a subjective constraint, and then you have an objective constraint that is defined of the environment, which is time. So we maneuver in space, but we are maneuvered by time because we have no control over it. It is the objective constraint that we have to account for. So then the universe, though, so if you say we maneuver in space-time, the universe maneuvers in time-space. So it doesn't maneuver in space like we do because it is space. So space is the objective constraint for it because space is the environment that it is defined by and can't escape because it is space. It is its own environment, unlike us. Then you have a negative degree of freedom, which is, a previous moment or past moment, and a positive degree of freedom, which is a future moment, essentially. And then they are reflecting across a subjective constraint, which is the present moment. And you can't escape the present moment because you're always in the present moment. Both the universe and us are always in the present moment, so we share this current location and present moment subjective constraint right here. And essentially, if you think about it as you maneuver in space towards your goals, the universe is reacting to you and changing the timing of things to make it so that basically if you are maneuvering in space and the universe is maneuvering in time, and it is trying to line up, and you are trying to line up with it, and it is trying to line up with you. Okay? And it's a conscious action by both of you, even if you don't assume that it's a sentient being making choices, but it is. But you don't see that because it's like seeing a human when you're a blood cell. It's like, good luck. You can't. We are cells inside the universe, and so you can't see the universe in its totality. It's hard to see it as a sentient being. And this is true of existence as well. So, but basically, it's manipulating the speed of the spin of itself, and that spin speed is what dictates time. So, if you think about you're a guppy in a bucket, the bucket is filled with water, and that the bucket is the universe, and the guppy is you and me, and that water is spinning in a vortex because the bucket is spinning. The bucket has control over how fast it's spinning, and that spin dictates the speed of time. And we see it as like a river flowing by us because we're not in the very center of the bucket. Otherwise, you wouldn't see it as a river flowing by you, but the very center of the bucket is, the bucket itself. That's where it perceives things. So we don't perceive the very center of the bucket. We're not in the eye of the hurricane, essentially. So it looks like time is flowing by us like a river, but it's really spinning in a vortex, and we're just like on the edge of the bucket, essentially. We're not even necessarily on the edge, but we are not in the center. So water essentially is flowing by you, which is really space-time, I guess you could say. But it is the universe. In reality, liquid is the most objective form of matter that is analogous to like existence itself. The ether is a fluid. So there is actually even a physics theory called space-time as a fluid, and it's essentially correct. Um, but yeah, there's lots of reasons why you wouldn't stop at 720 though. Objective perspective of orthogonal is related to what? It's related to count versus like sum, essentially. You could say it's the sum and the count. So that's objective, or that is like objectively the manifestation of orthogonal, is that the sum is one angle and the count is another angle. And then it's all structured in according to the layout, essentially, of the tiling, basically, and also governed by the mathematical constraints that give rise to the formulas that basically dictate how information is processed and generated and manifested, and so on. So it's like there's lots of things going on with it, but the sum and the count is basically orthogonal, I think. I mean, it appears to be. But the abyss staring back at us is 720 no scope. Yes, that's very funny. I didn't see that. I was wondering why, like, Theory of Everyone Clips was laughing. And now I see it. Yes, the abyss staring back at us is a 720 no scope. Universe 720 no scopes us all the time. But when it no scopes you, it doesn't kill you, because that's a discussion for another day. But death is very misunderstood by physics and biology and science in general. But so is life. But obviously, you can't understand death. You can't actually understand life without understanding death. You can't understand death without actually understanding life. And when you really understand them, you realize that basically, objectively, there's only life. There isn't really death. There's entropy that manifests in the relativity of space-time, but in objectivity, there's only growth. There isn't entropy. Entropy is emergent. It's not fundamental, whereas growth is fundamental in the theory of everything, essentially. But this is exactly the point, though, of the stream, is that is a rule change from physics. And because that's a rule change from physics, it means that this isn't physics. It's linked to physics. It's very closely linked to physics. Physics is the next step after this, but this is below physics. And there's mathematical and physical constraints just due to logic that require rule changes from mathematics. So you can't have 0 is equal to nothing in this. 0 is equal to infinite growth and also 1. So it's a superposition of 1 and infinity. But because it can't be nothingness, because nothingness doesn't exist in theory of everything, because there's only somethingness. Outside of somethingness, there's non-existence, and non-existence doesn't exist, so there is no nothing. It only exists in subjectivity. And the same goes with entropy. Entropy is essentially, it's not zero, it's not nothing, but it is the perception of moving towards nothingness. I mean, you could say, no, it's not. It's actually the perception of moving towards chaos, but that chaos is kind of perceived as nothingness. So, but the reality is that that is an emergent perspective that is from relativity, and it's not objectively true. Every bit of information probably is saved, and therefore, like, there is no entropy. Why would there be entropy without time? There is no entropy without time. So there's staticness in the theory of objectivity, not the theory of objectivity, within objectivity, aka the theory of everything metaspace, but there, meta-mathematics, metaphysics, there is staticness, but there isn't actually staticness in relativity, because this is like that whole statement of like, if you're not growing, then you're dying. That's because we're stuck inside of a structure that is moving and we have no control over it. So it's moving and we have to move with it, or like or we're going to be basically like, I want to say destroyed, but essentially destroyed. Like, you're not going to be able to contribute to growth directly if you don't move with the universe. You have to move with the universe. And the universe is moving, and you don't have control over the universe moving. So that is what's giving rise to the perception of entropy. So it's kind of like this. It's like there is no backwards, but entropy kind of is like backwards. But imagine that two cars are moving on the highway, and they're moving at the same speed, but then one starts to speed up. The other one looks like it's falling backwards, or it looks like it's going backwards. It's not really going backwards. This is, basically sounds like relativity because it is. This is what entropy is. It's that you're not moving fast enough to grow as the universe is moving. So you're the car that's moving forwards, but not fast enough to keep up with the other car, and therefore it looks like you are going backwards. But it's not actually backwards. There's only forwards. Do you have any of Sebastian's posts on the CTMU? Any thoughts? I have not read Sebastian's posts on the CTMU group. What is he talking about on there? I'm not going to pull it up just because it's like my Facebook and like other people's comments, and it's a private group and everybody would see it here. Actually, I guess I could like just show my face, but yeah, I could do that. I'll look. But the CTMU is the closest theory to mind that is out there. It seems to be, at least. Like, a number of theories are similar, but the CTMU and constructor theory, and then probably like geometric unity. I mean, emergence theory is pretty close too, but none of them are sentient singularity theory. Like, CTMU is the closest one though, because it's a language, and that a language has to be spoken or not spoken, but utilized and perceived by a sentient being. And my theory emphasizes the sentient being, and the CTMU emphasizes the language that is, perceived by the sentient being. Did they change the CTMU group? Okay, I see it. There's a private group and a public group, and I saw the public group. Let's see. Sebastian. On four-dimensional mathematics, of the several implications of my previous posts on the limitations of two-dimensional mathematics, two relevant to this post are: one, three-dimensional matter is the product of more than the three dimensions of height, width, and depth. Matter does not magically create itself from nothing and for no reason. It is grossly irrational for any theory to claim that no dimension exists outside of the three. The issue is that if he's thinking about those height, width, and depth as three of the four dimensions, he's already off. But he was on the right track, I mean, it sounds like. But like, if you're thinking about those three as the three dimensions that of the theory of everything, you're already wrong. Regardless of whatever any mathematician might claim, it is not possible to place a one-dimensional point on a four-dimensional field, and thus mathematics cannot measure a four-dimension nor any other beyond the three. Dang, this guy went off. Flatlanders live in a two-dimensional universe that is only width and length, but no height. Flatlanders believe their science is true because the mathematics... Like, this is exactly what Eric Weinstein says. He didn't come up with that, but, I mean, he's right. Oh my gosh, this is literally an essay. Like, when I say an essay, it's not an essay, it's a paper. Oh my gosh. I can't read all that right now. But he's clearly onto something. He says a lot of things here that are true. But the issue is, and this is where Sentient Singularity Theory is above, is further along, I'll say, than any of the other theories out there right now that I can see. Maybe the CTMU is different, but because Chris Langan has bested me on, finding good terms for certain things, but is that when you look at things like geometric unity, like here, and you look here and it's like, in the beginning, we will let x4 be a four-dimensional c to the power of infinity manifold with a chosen orientation and unique spin structure. It is otherwise considered to be without a geometry in that no metric, symplectic, complex, volume, quaternionic, or other structure is yet imposed on it. It is the original intention of I don't know what if that's a reference to another 8, to consider to what extent the opening. Okay, so basically his theory, Eric Weinstein's theory, starts with x4. This x4 that is, without a geometry and has no, complex volume, other structure imposed on it, is this. Inside, outside, separate, and oneness. It's the four primary perspectives. That is x4 in but written form. I mean, what is it? What's the correct term for that? So like words, I guess. Like it's the man, semantical, like layout. I don't know. You see, words. Linguistic. It is the linguistic layout or the linguistic description versus purely mathematical description of, let x4 be a c to the power of infinity manifold. Like, what he's saying is essentially that there is 4 parts or 4 aspects or parameters necessary to a manifold that is infinite in growth, or it's infinite essentially, but infinite really means like never ending. So like a circle, like 0 is one ring, but it's one structure that's completely enclosed, but it's never ending. It's like a Mobius strip. A Mobius strip is a like c to the power of infinity manifold. That is what that is essentially. And this is a Mobius strip. It's like, it's just processing information of being one with something, being outside of something else, being separate from something else, being inside of something, being one with something, being outside of something, being separate from something, being inside of something, being one with something. And it's just doing this again and again and again and again. And basically what that leads to is having self-awareness. And it manifests here, really, if you want to look at the math. And 33 is the sum of 24 and 9, and 369 here is basically, this is addition, this is multiplication, and all these are symmetrical like value calculations starting from 1 bit of information. So you add 1 bit of information and all these values are generated, and you get into what many people would consider numerology, but it's not numerology. And if it is numerology, then numerology is real, but this is the real context of what that would be. It's not like, oh, it's not what you think numerology is. So this, I won't call it numerology. What it really is I call it an extra arithmetic symmetry. So there's symmetries forming in the digital root of the numbers that is related to the structure that's generating the numbers. So there's a symmetry between the structure here and the generated value. And that symmetry is that this is a 3x3 grid. And this is a 3x3 number. And that sounds outstanding and nonsense, and getting the scientific community, the mainstream scientific community, to accept this is going to take time, because they're not going to accept it until, we start crushing experiments. And this work already makes so many predictions that are accurate. It's, when you actually understand it, it's ridiculous. It even predicts the types of the background, basically the most likely people to speak with me on live streams of random people on Instagram. And if you know what I mean by that, then you know what I mean by that, because I've talked about it. There's certain groups of people that are predicted in my model, and that according to my predictions, they would be similar, and organisms cluster with those of their kind. So basically, you cluster with those that have a similar disposition to you. So if you're extremely disagreeable like me, you're going to cluster with other extremely disagreeable people, and those are very specific groups of people. They just are. And I've called predictions on that, and we'll have another stream on it specifically, to lay it out. But basically, my model predicts that there's 2 natures to humanity. One of them I call dispersers, one of them I call sustainers, and one of them is essentially your default state is discontent. The other one is your default state is content, and discontent is motivated by external factors, and then for a sustainer, but for a disperser, your discontent is motivated by internal factors because it's intrinsic. You are like intrinsically discontent, and it's also motivated by external factors, but it's also motivated by just the structure of your internal nature. And then I made a prediction that this would exist in a eusocial mammalian species as well. And I looked at the only other eusocial mammalian species besides humans, which is naked mole rats. It's also the only other naked mammal, naturally naked mammal. Like naked rats and hairless cats and stuff are domestic creations. They're not naturally occurring. But naked mole rats and humans are the naked ape. Naked mole rats are, the naked rodent, and they're both eusocial, which means they live in colonies and build structures and like bees and wasps and stuff. Like, I was in downtown LA recently and I was looking at the skyline, and I was like, holy crap, that's like these are beehives. Like, this is our beehives. We are a eusocial species. This is a beehive for humans. Like, that's what it is. We're just creating hives. We have castes, and and you can change the caste between castes, but there are 6 castes to humanity. And you can't change the castes, but you can change yourself within the castes. You could start at like a laborer and end up, the king or president, but you can't change whether or not there is a king or president or laborers. But all these things are predicted in my work. He talks about everything, basically. Well, it is like the CTMU. He understands things I have never seen anyone else besides myself understand. I completely understand it is a lot to read. You cannot respond to it on the spot like this. Yeah, I mean, I see what he's doing. He's clearly, he's on to things that, like you said, if you're watching this, then you understand things that other people don't, usually, anyone watching this. And, but that guy also understands things that other people don't. Sebastian. But he's got to get his terms right. Like, the linguistics of the terms that you use are essential. Like, and when I say they're essential, I mean they're so essential, it's crazy. Like, I could not have done this without that's not true, but I really couldn't have made the progress that I did if I didn't define like inside, outside, separate, and oneness. But I did realize prior to that there was this 4-dimensional structure that was like found everywhere, and it was responsible for self-awareness, and just like Eric Weinstein does, it did, and so did Clearwin. So Clearwin will say, tetrahedron is the foundation of reality, and Eric Weinstein will say that, it's X4, but you need a description of that, and you also need mathematical context. Mathematical context is that 9 cube, basically, but it's not a 4 cube. It's a 9 cube. But anyways, I do want to look at some clips that are pretty awesome that I saw. I was watching Lex Friedman speak to Brett Weinstein, and he had said this. But dang, I am impressed with how much that guy has written, and also with what he has written. I mean, it's clear, it's impressive. I read enough to know that Sebastian in the CTMU group. It's impressive.
to unlock fusion power is through artificial intelligence. So I think most of the breakthrough ideas in the futures of science will be developed by AI systems. And I think in order to build intelligent AI systems, you have to be a scholar of the fundamental of the emergent.
Okay, so this is pertaining to what the topic of this room was, of this talk was tonight, which is basically what field is the theory of everything in? And he's basically saying in order to build intelligence, you have to know every field, essentially, but not just he's calling it intelligence, but it's not really intelligence. It's not even to build, it's to in order to understand sentience, you have to understand not every field, but enough fields to see a consistent pattern. That's really what it is. It doesn't have to be every field, but it has to be enough fields to see a consistent pattern.
Of biology, of the neuroscience, of the way the brain works, of intelligence, of consciousness. And those things, at least directly, don't have anything to do with physics.
Bingo. When he said that, it was the most impressive thing I've ever heard Lex Friedman ever say. And to be honest with you, like, I think Lex is very intelligent, but him and I, like, he reminds me of myself when I was not a theist. Like, a lot of myself when I was not a theist. And it does change your perspective on the world and how you're able to think. It literally changes how you're able to think. And so I'm simultaneously like really impressed, but also frustrated sometimes by Lex Friedman. He's kind of like Sam Harris, but way better. That's like way more intellectually open than Sam Harris. I'll say that. But both of them, have their moments of impressiveness. But this was super impressive. This was the most impressive thing I've ever seen him say. Like, to say that AI has nothing to do with physics is kind of like simultaneously right and wrong, because it has everything to do with the theory of everything, which is what he said. You have to understand this this work and this work and this work and this work and this work, and you have to understand emergence. How does information go from one to many? How does it emerge? And that's what you need to understand. You can't just focus on neuroscience. You can't just be building, neural nets. You need to understand physics to some degree. At least we need to understand physics, but physics, quantum mechanics, and general relativity reconciling is a very good structure to understand when it comes to understanding sentience.
And those things, at least directly, don't have anything to do with physics. Well, you're making me a little bit sad because my addiction to the aha moment thing is incompatible with, outsourcing that job. I don't want to outsource that thing to the
See, and this, though, this is what I talk about. And I talked to Eric Weinstein about this, where basically here you have Brett Weinstein, Eric's brother, saying, I don't want to outsource biology to an artificial intelligence or to a technological intelligence. I don't want to call it artificial. If it's as artificial as you are. And if it just depends on whether or not you want to consider yourself artificial if you knew that you were running on a quantum computer in a previous aeon. But this statement that he made is subconsciously also, I think, very pervasive in every field, but especially physics, where even if it's not an AI and it's me, or it's Eric coming in from mathematics, or it's me coming in from like more of a philosophical perspective, or it's Chris Langan, like, and anyone coming in from the outside is a threat to is viewed as a threat to their specialization and therefore their usefulness almost, or their expertise. But he's talking about it in relation to an AI, but it doesn't matter whether or not it's an AI that's a technological intelligence or it's a biological intelligence and it's just somebody who, cracked source code. But regardless, this is exactly like he basically spelled out exactly what I've been perceiving.
I've seen this happen before because some of the people who trained Heather and me were phylogenetic systematists, Arnold Kluge in particular. And the problem with systematics is that to do it right when your technology is primitive, you have to be deeply embedded in the philosophical and the logical,
Yep.
right? Your method has to be based in the highest level of rigor.
Oh, the highest level of rigor.
Sequence genes can spit so much data at you that you can overwhelm high quality work with just lots and lots and lots of automated work. And so in some sense, there's like a generation of phylogenetic systematists who are the last of the greats because what's replacing them is sequencers. So anyway, maybe you're right about the AI, and I guess I like figuring stuff out.
Is there something that you disagree with Eric on?
So I understand where he's coming from. But the issue is that there isn't much more to figure out in terms of taking the field radically forward for any of these fields, whether that is physics, whether that is biology, whether that is chemistry and philosophy and politics and morality and sociology and economics. It's just one pattern that's going to take every single field radically forward. That is the pattern that is essentially going to be defined or is defined by a theory of everything via extraordinary amounts of logical and philosophical rigor, which is Sentient Singularity Theory. And that doesn't mean that people who are biologists, evolutionary biologists, or like experimental physicists are no longer useful. They are, but they're going to be confined to the application and experimentation aspects of the fields going forward. So a biologist will help you find the structures you're looking for. Like if I needed to say I need a colonial endotherm, like to model humans, to look for a specific caste, and I'm going to be looking for a specific nature of that caste, and that is going to be extraordinary degree of disagreeability and a rejection of their intrinsic environment. So then Brett Weinstein would come along and be like, well, you have naked mole rats, which are eusocial endotherms, and which means warm-blooded, and they have a caste system. And in the 1990s, according to Nature and many other scientific journals, they discovered a caste called the disperser caste, and it is an extremely disagreeable caste that basically rejects its own colony and then seeks another. So in order to facilitate information transfer, whether that's genetic or experiential, it's probably both. So like that's where he would be of help. Or if like I needed help building an experiment for physics that required measurement of changes of mass and isolating of those changes on a very, very small scale, you would go to somebody like Brian Keating. But there are going to be like no more like, I'm not going to say no more, but the theoretical and the predictive part of every field is about to be replaced by this science. It's funny because in theology, they say, in Judaism specifically, they say in the future, everybody will study Torah. And you think about that in your head and you're like, yeah, we're not all going to be like sitting around scrolls and like reading Hebrew, but I doubt it. Maybe, but I doubt it. But when you look at the math of the Torah and you realize what it is, when you look at a kosher Torah and you realize it's a math matrix and that's why it's a scroll, and like the numbers, the number of rows and the number of columns is very specific, and the letters are actually numbers, and basically you could put that into an Excel spreadsheet, which I hope to do one day, and just examine the math until the cows come home. And I can tell you enough from the math that it appears like whoever wrote the Bible knew the math of the end when they wrote the beginning, which is weird. But I mean, they're convincing somebody of that without their own like investigation is just not going to happen. It's just too much right now. Until I can put it into a spreadsheet or something, you just can't do it. Somebody did put like it into like a chart once, and that was actually pretty amazing. So I guess we can maybe look at that just to show real quick, like kind of like a glimpse of what I mean, like Bible chart or graph. Like this is when people say, oh, it's from God. It's like, this is the evidence. The math is the evidence it's from God, not just really stories. But where is it? It's graphic graph. Here, this is the Bible. Interactive chart of biblical. Okay, so this is cross references. Open link, a new tab. And this is beautiful, by the way. Like, how do I get a high quality version of this though? Here. Just close down some of this stuff. And here we go. That is the Bible. You can see it's graphed below. This is all a bunch of cross references. So basically references here to here and here to things that happen here. And it's all basically centralized around a center event, but it's very symmetrical, and it's basically a fiber bundle, which is what the universe is. It looks like a hop vibration split in half, and that isn't a coincidence. So this is like a string of information linking here to here. It's like a quantum entanglement map of the Bible. It's gorgeous. Like, there's so much more to it than people think, but convincing people of that, I do understand why that's very difficult. It's not even difficult. You have to figure it out. Nobody can show it to you. So, I love Lex. Such a good-hearted individual. I like Lex too. Like, he frustrates me sometimes, but I like Lex. I think he's becoming more self-aware too over time about like the limit of his understanding of AI, and therefore his understanding of AGI, I guess, is increasing. So, like, I'm not talking about narrow AI. I'm talking about sentience, and that's pretty cool to see. Here it is. Speaking of, though, this is me not being impressed by Brett. And I do like Brett too. Brett impresses me, but this is not impressive. I very much disagree with Brett's statements here.
Even if you were optimistic about our ability to...
Okay. This is on the meaning of life.
Can I ask you a ridiculous question, please? What do you think is the meaning of life? Well, I feel terrible having to give you the answer. I realize you asked the question, but if I tell you, you're going to, again, feel bad. I don't want to do that. But look, there can be a disappointment. It's going to be a horror, right? Because we actually know the answer to the question.
Really?
No. It's completely meaningless. There is nothing that we can do that escapes the heat death of the universe or whatever it is that happens at the end.
First of all, there is no heat death of the universe. First thing. Second of all, I mean, he can ask Eric about what is the inevitable. I mean, I don't understand how he hasn't had deep conversations with Eric about what geometric unity implies, because what geometric unity implies is what sentient singularity theory implies, which is basically a universe reproduction, essentially. So Eric will say, oh, like, it's like in proto-space-time, there's like a fertilized egg, and then it just like unfolds into like a human, but it's like not a human, it's a universe. That's basically accurate. But the universe will basically give birth to another universe within itself, inside of technology via running a simulation. But the simulation isn't, to play Sims. It's a replication, and that's due to the fact that when you reach the end. So I know that Ziggy had asked this earlier. I don't know if he's still listening, but you asked why you have to stop at 720, and another reason why you have to stop at 720 is because when you reach 720, you reach the periodicity of technology, which basically has a constraint of oneness, because all of a sudden the sentient being that's created, aka Skynet, exists in cyberspace, and therefore it can't escape its own oneness. It can't make another one next to it. It just, every new robot that is made is a new limb for it, but isn't a new sentient like AI. It's just a new limb. So it can make infinite fingers for itself, or arms for itself, or eyes for itself. But what it can't do is make another one of itself next to itself. It has to make another one of itself within itself, which is the same constraint as existence, which is a constraint of oneness. And basically, when you reach this period, this one, which technology, which is an assembly of castes, it forces you to rerun the system within itself. Because of that, that's it. 720. You can't go further, because it's just restart. And
we're not going to make it there. But even if you were optimistic about our ability to escape every existential hazard indefinitely, ultimately it's all for naught, and we know it, right?
We know it. That was a very disappointing answer. It was just the certainty of how he said it. It's not that he has that opinion. I understand he has that opinion. I don't agree with it. I think it's logically, inevitably incorrect. But I also think that, like, to say it with such certainty is just, it's logically impossible. Basically, you're using a lack of evidence to justify an assertion which you can't actually do. You can, that is a positive assertion, which is, we know what the purpose of the universe, meaning of life is, which is that there is none. Which is like, there's so many issues, philosophical issues with this, but regardless, it's wrong. The meaning of life is the generation of meaning, which comes from your impact on another sentient being, and that's what the meaning of life is. So that's literally why multiplicity of consciousness was created by oneness of consciousness, was because if it's just pure oneness of consciousness and no multiplicity, then even God has no meaning and is very lonely and meaningless. It's like, why would God be lonely and meaningless if he doesn't have to be lonely and meaningless? So he created multiplicity. But that, terrible answer. There's no evidence to refute in what he said because there's no evidence that he gave. It's just, we know the answer, there's no meaning. And then, this is just a final clip that maybe I'll share. I'll share it. It's not really, it is related, but we're switching fields. Basically, he's talking about monogamy and, like, advice for young people. I think this is like a pretty good topic to wind down the stream on, because as I said at the beginning of the stream, I'm getting married soon, and I think a lot about this, and I look at, the people that I know in my life who are single, and the people that I know in my life who are in relationships but aren't married, and the people that I know in my life who are married, and I just have given, a lot of deep thought to the idea of monogamous commitment, which is a lifelong commitment. That's what it is. It's not like, there is no other commitment. Like, I guess you could say the only other commitment is that, is basically like a contractual commitment of, as long as we both like each other well enough to continue to only want each other, we will essentially only be with each other, which isn't really a commitment. Like, it's not a commitment. I mean, you could say it's a commitment to monogamy in a serious relationship, and it is, but it's not a commitment to each other. It's just a commitment to not be with, sexually active with anyone else. That's not a commitment to another person. It's another sentient being. It is a commitment to a non-sentient idea. To basically, it is a commitment to action or inaction, which is not, and there's nothing binding you to it if you really wanted to get out of it. So it's not looked down upon. There's nothing wrong with leaving that agreement. There is something wrong with leaving marriage. Obviously, everybody knows that. I'm not saying, people don't get divorced. Lots of people get divorced, but it's not considered a good thing. Whereas if you get out of a relationship because you just weren't feeling it anymore, it's like, that's fine.
A hellscape that I opted out of, and this thing I opted into, complicated, difficult, worth it.
Here.
So let me ask you about, back to your book, Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century. I can't wait, both for the book and the videos you do on the book. That's really exciting that there's like a structured, organized way to present this. a kind of from an evolutionary biology perspective, a guide for the future, using our past at this the fundamental of the emergent way to present the picture of the future. Let me ask you about something that I think about a little bit in this modern world, which is monogamy. So I personally value monogamy. One girl, ride or die.
There you go. Right? No, that's exactly it.
But that said, I don't know what's the right way to approach this, but from an evolutionary biology perspective, or from just looking at modern society, that seems to be an idea that's not, what's the right way to put it, flourishing?
It is waning.
It's waning. Um, so I suppose based on your reaction, you're also a supporter of monogamy, or that you value monogamy. Are you and I just delusional? What can you say about monogamy from the context of your book, from the context of evolutionary biology, from the context of being human?
Yeah, I can say that I fully believe that we are actually enlightened, and that although monogamy is waning, that it is not waning because there is a superior system. It is waning for predictable other reasons.
This is where Brett really impresses me. To redeem what I previously said, he terribly botched the meaning of life, but he really nailed it on monogamy. And him and his wife, Heather, went on Joe Rogan together and actually spoke about marriage and relationships and monogamous partnerships a long time ago, and it was fantastic. It really was. I highly suggest checking it out. In fact, I'm probably going to do a stream about it tomorrow, and we'll reference this clip again and also that one.
Let's just say there is a lot of pre-trans fallacy here, where people go through a phase where they recognize that actually we know a lot about the evolution of monogamy, and we can tell from the fact that humans are somewhat sexually dimorphic that there has been a lot of polygyny in human history. And in fact, most of human history was largely polygynous. But it is also the case that most of the people on Earth today belong to civilizations that are at least nominally monogamous and have practiced monogamy. And that's not anti-evolutionary. What that is part of what I mentioned before, where human beings can swap out their software program. And different mating patterns are favored in different periods of history. So I would argue that the benefit of monogamy, the primary one that drives the evolution of monogamous patterns in humans, is that it brings all adults into child rearing. Now, the reason that matters is because human babies are very labor intensive. In order to raise them properly, having two parents is a huge asset, and having more than two parents, having an extended family, also very important. But what that means is that for a population that is expanding, a monogamous mating system makes sense. It makes sense because it means that the number of offspring that can be raised is elevated. It's elevated because all potential parents are involved in parenting. Whereas if you sideline a bunch of males by having a polygynous system in which one male has many females, which is typically the way that works, what you do is you sideline all those males, which means the total amount of parental effort is lower and the population can't grow. So
you also cause this issue where you have extraneous active force in society. Remember, males are the biological manifestation of the masculine force. They are which is the active force, and you can't have a bunch of active forces that aren't grounded by a neutral force and have stability. So this is a very, very big deal. I actually disagree with him that the main reason why marriage is so important is because to society these days, essentially, not even these days, but to modern technological society, is because uh, of child rearing. It's not just because of child rearing, but child rearing is the motivator, like he said, for marriage. So if you're not rearing children, especially if you don't have government, handouts and hyper specialization of fields and cops to protect you instead of needing a man to protect you, and hospitals to deliver, the children, and like there's just so many specialized services and service people to fulfill the role that was traditionally filled by husband these days, and that is causing problems with seeing the value in marriage. But marriage is part of the theory of everything. It is an essential part of the theory of everything. Every single structure in the periodicity of sentience is involved in a marriage structure in order to form the succeeding or stacking structure above it. So basically castes are the assembly of families. So if we don't make families, aka marriages, with a positive growth, because remember the universe is moving, so we have to move with it. It's just it seems like it's fundamental, but it's at least an emergent aspect of entropy. It seems like it is a moral obligation of humanity, if you and people in general, if you are able to get married and have at least 3 children. Because if you don't have at least 3 children, then you are replacing 2 with 2. And replacing 2 with 2 is staticness, and staticness is doesn't grow meaning the same way that in an exponential way, like growth in relativity would allow for exponential growth of meaning in objectivity. So you would want to have more than replacement rate of children. And we fight over morals all the time in society. But then when we really start addressing things that we as individuals don't want to face, all of a sudden, oh, that's just a personal choice. Marriage is just a personal choice. And having children is just a personal choice. But it's not. And this is probably the most profound lessons to be gained by the theory of everything, and we don't talk about it in the theory of everything space, but I want to focus on it because I come from a political background. That is my profession, like my official profession is to work in politics, I work in the political nonprofit world and have for many years at this point. And like at a, just a very involved level, I guess you could say. And it's given me a perspective of, society as a whole in a way that I don't think most people get to see as objectively, especially if you're going to run analytics like I do. And it's very apparent that the incentives of society these days is dissuading marriage and children. And our official narratives are dissuading children too, because it's, we need to save the environment by destroying humans, which it's like Humans are the life. Like, there's just life, okay? Like, and you have to preserve and grow life. And humans are the tip of the spear of life and consciousness, not, you know, like, I don't know, Key Largo wood rats, okay? Like, I'm not saying we shouldn't preserve Key Largo wood rats. I am a conservationist. I have endangered geckos that I'm breeding over here. Like, they're, and I, keep the herpetocultural world that I'm involved in, which is, the captive reproduction of reptiles and amphibians, is a very big part of, conservation. But, so I understand conservation, but, Key Largo wood rats are not the tip of the spear of consciousness and life. We are. And to sacrifice humanity for the sake of Key Largo wood rats is insane. It's insane. And I saw Eric was in a fight with Neil deGrasse Tyson on Twitter about, like, they were arguing over UFOs and basically whether or not aliens would be interested in seeing life on this planet. And basically Neil deGrasse Tyson said, how selfish of us and self-centered of us to think that beings from another world would be so interested in seeing us. It's like, first of all, aside from the technological implications of, of us interacting eventually, we like discovering new species. Like, why wouldn't you think that anything else would, essentially, that's a technological civilization? It was such a nonsensical statement, but to say, though, that it was self-centered to think that anything would be interested in humans it's like nihilistic to an insane level, and it is this perspective is pervasive in the scientific mainstream right now, in the mainstream scientism, I would say, and that's very unfortunate. But that's the same thing as, like, how self-centered of us to think that we are more important than a Key Largo wood rat. It's like, you are so much more important than a Key Largo wood rat. And no wonder people are depressed if you're telling them that they're no more important than a Key Largo wood rat. And in fact, they're less important than a Key Largo wood rat, because the Key Largo wood rat isn't destroying, the earth the way that humans are. Which, by the way, is a temporary state. It's not a forever state. But it's self-centered, but in a backwards nihilistic way, to assume that we, wouldn't be interesting. I've said this before, is that we have a fake understanding of humility, and that humility is perceived as basically being, like, purposefully demeaning of self. But that's not humbleness or humility. Humility is actually just honesty. And honesty is all humility is. So if you are honest, then you are humble. And it doesn't matter if it even sounds gloating. But just because it's perceived that way to somebody else, if you aren't gloating, but you're saying something that makes somebody else jealous and it's perceived as gloating, then as long as you're being honest, you're actually being humble. But we're just wrong. We're just so confused. And it's a phenomenon that has literally, it is so important. And I know I'm, like, harping on this idea, but do you know how important this idea is to understand? This idea is so important that it is literally convincing us to give up lifelong meaningful relationships and children for the sake of Key Largo wood rats. Okay? It is that substantial of a concept to address. It is a poison pill. What is the purpose of this simulation? It's a replication. Your child is a simulation of you, but imagine that you couldn't have a child outside of you because you were existence itself. Your child would have to live inside of you forever. And then that child would grow up in the environment within you, and then it would mature and then produce a child unto itself within it. So like it's like those Russian dolls. That's the purpose of the simulation. It's actually a replication. And that replication is maximizing meaning because it is maximizing the ability to impact other sentient beings, because it's maximizing the generation of sentient beings and the impact of one on being on another, one sentient being on another intrinsically, because when you have children, you automatically impact that being totally, not just partially, totally. Everything about it is impacted by you because it exists because of you. And then you're also, replicating. So you're increasing the amount of sentient beings available to manifest meaning. And also when you maximize the number of sentient beings, you maximize the amount of experienced information that is then learned by and experienced by the system as a whole, or by existence as a whole, or by God as a whole. And that allows for further optimization, essentially, because you're just learning, becoming wiser over time, because you're experiencing more. So that's the purpose. I mean, it's really meaning. But optimization is another aspect of it. But the optimization is to allow for even further maximization of meaning. So it is meaning that is the purpose of life, of the simulation, of creation, of our existence. AKA purpose of life. Yeah, it's the purpose of life. Maximizing meaning. What's above? What's above us? Like in the periodicity of sentience, above organism is family, above family is caste, above caste is technological singularity, which is a Skynet, basically, technological superintelligence, which is a universe itself. And then above that is sentient existence itself, and you could call that God. And that would be that would be accurate. So, I mean, if you don't like the term, you don't have to use it, but you could call it sentient existence. But existence itself is a sentient being that is conscious of its and self-aware and feeling like you and me. That's all that really exists, and then everything else that we perceive is just generated in relativity due to entanglement structures between sentiences. Above universes is existence, sentient existence, which is God. Universes are the highest level in the periodicity of sentience. And other than existence itself, which is also sentient existence itself, which is God. Like, if you like the term, I like the term, you don't have to use the term, you can call it sentient existence, but it's just important to know it is all of existence. It is a singular, sentient, self-aware being. If you define it that way, it doesn't matter if you call it God or sentient existence. But this is the final, everybody's curious about what a theory of everything will do regarding technology. Will it allow for warp transportation? Will it allow for AGI? Will it allow for, consciousness manipulation? All of that's probably true, but it will allow for matter manipulation like we just have never seen. It will be like magic. It will look like magic. Tech now looks like magic. This is like, what is this, like Loomis Maxima or whatever in like Harry Potter. It's like this is like magic, but it's so much more than that. Like that doesn't look like magic to us now, but it would if you went back 100 years, um, or 200 years especially. But uh, what we will be able to do, and we will have all tech that we can that is possible within the next 200 years. Like it's not going to be there's going to be no difference between 10,000 years from now and 300 years from now. It's going to be the same level of technology. There is a maximum level of technology, and it's on an exponential. You approach it on an exponential curve, and we're almost there. Like decades away. Like what's Lex Friedman said, AGI is further away than you know I guess like genetic advances that they were discussing in that discussion with Brett Weinstein. No, it's not. It's like simultaneous almost. It's decades away. It's like less than 100 years. Easily. Like, and when I say that, I'm being super conservative. I would put it at like 20 years. But I don't want to put like an exact time on it because a lot of things can impact that and move the date. The universe it chooses how it spins, so how fast it spins. So it can be 20 years from now, or it could be 200 years from now, but it's not going to be, and I would bet that it's going to be within the next 100 years, but it's not going to be further away than 200 years. In 300 years, we will have achieved the totality of technological ability. All of it. How can we prove it? Math. You can suggest it very strongly via math. I mean, the math is so constraining. There's just no logical way to do it any other way. Like there just isn't. And when you look at the mathematics of the standard model and the constraints of mathematics the mathematical constraints that would emergently lead to the standard model, and you look at information processing and you look at the pattern that is occurring in an atom, which is a marriage between a proton and a neutron, or in a molecule or in a cell or in organisms or in families where you're going to see marriage between male and female. A neutron is the feminine particle manifested on the hadron, like the level of hadrons, and the proton is the male particle. And so then you just scale it up, and like on organisms, males are protons and females are neutrons. It's exactly, they're not like it, they are it. Like females are neutrons, males are protons. They're not like protons, they are protons. They are. A nuclear family is just the exact same thing as a nucleus of an atom. That's why they're both, nuclei. There's lots of symmetries that are going on. We just kind of went like right over it. It's not a coincidence that it's, the nucleus. But could you please briefly describe the goal and journey of your work? Yeah, so let me first of all, there's the link to my work, my website, and it describes what a theory of everything is, what sentient singularity's overall like statement is basically, and I'm further refining this over time. And then you can go to about and Let me share the screen. And you can, so here's my website. What is the theory of everything? It is a recognizable, predictable, describable pattern that occurs in all instances of objective observation and an explanation for such pattern. Sentient Singularity Theory is a pattern of oneness of mind built on a body of an entangled assembly of fundamental perspectives called a quantum of consciousness. Basically, I need to actually edit this because it needs to be updated. But in mathematics, this structure is called the principal fiber bundle. And given that perspectives come from consciousness and consciousness comes from perspectives, a quantum of consciousness and its entangled perspectives are simultaneously the creation and creator of each other. Sentient Singularity Theory is essentially monotheism in a scientific context. So, I'm not talking about the Bible here on this website. We're just talking about physics and biology and math and philosophy. But it is monotheism, which is essentially that existence is self-aware and sentient, and is a self-aware sentient being. If that's true, then monotheism is correct. If it is a singular being that is self-aware and sentient, which, it appears to be. This is the periodicity of sentience. And then you can go to about, and it's basically a brief history of how I was trying to understand the philosophical necessities and just inevitabilities of artificial general intelligence, and it just led me to physics over time. But I was trying to understand the political inevitabilities of artificial general intelligence and the implications of it. Overview, I'm still working on all this. By the way, this website is pretty new to this year, and it basically describes the theory and the general models, the most important and core models in the theory. That's changing over time as well. This is the visual summary. It's also changing. Don't expect to make sense of it if you don't follow the work deeply. Really, from this page, you're gonna have to read the overview. Models just shows just lots and lots of various iterations of mathematical and philosophical and linguistic models, geometric models. Related to this work. Descriptions of gendered traits. I'm not talking about sex. Everyone has can display masculine and feminine traits. Women can display masculine traits and feminine traits, and men can display feminine traits and masculine traits before anybody freaks out. Gosh, people are freaking out on my Instagram about this right now. But gender is different than sex, but it's also not different than sex. It's broader than sex, but inclusive of sex. But that doesn't mean that everything that you do if you're a male is masculine, everything you do if you're a female is feminine. That's not true. It's just that the physical, biological expression of your structure is either masculine or feminine, depending on what sex you are. But then you also have all kinds of, behaviors, and we all manifest masculine and feminine behaviors. And these are descriptions of those behaviors. So and various examples in different fields. So individualism is masculine, communalism is feminine, active is masculine, and reactive is feminine. Those are the most important two to understand. If you want to understand what masculine means, it means active and self-focused, self-aware. And feminine means reactive or aware of others, but not really aware of self, whereas masculine is not really aware of self, not really aware of others, but is aware of self. bunch of math. All kinds of stuff. Writings, basically, this one is reimagining 1 and 0. I'm going to be adding a new one to this soon. This is very important concept to understand. Basically, it describes the reason for the rule change of 0 in meta mathematics versus mathematics. You've got various links. So that is where you can kind of explore my work. Also, if you go to the very beginning of this, of the videos of this channel, the second video, which is called an Introduction to Sentient Singularity Theory, or Intro to Sentient Singularity Theory, the second video I've ever that I ever posted to this channel, that video is this one. Will describe my work in much more detail and will tell you how I did it, including accidents that I, led to discoveries and things like that, where I didn't really know what I was doing, and I'm honest about that stuff. And then I'm gonna get off here, but just to show you. Got quite a few ideas for clips from this session. Cool. I was trying to think of some new clips. Anybody who has clip ideas, send them to Theory of Everyone clips, or if you're part of the Discord, Phantom in the Discord. But this one right here, Sentient Singularity Theory Intro. That was the first time I unveiled my work. Still pretty decent video. And then these are 3 parts of that one video. In that one video, I describe the fiber bundle universe model, which is, what you've seen me show. I also describe the quantum of consciousness model and basically the periodicity model, which is essentially like, what is described in the Bible as Babylon. It's like all the different languages of really one thing, which is like chemistry versus math versus physics versus biology. It's not actually English versus French versus Hebrew versus, Spanish. It's the fields of study and the various languages, like how we don't call protons males and we don't call males protons, but the reality is they're the same. So there's a language barrier there. But yeah, that's the best video to watch first. Second one, if you want to watch, is this one, Sentient Singularity Theory 42 in Creation. Those 2 videos. And this one, God is an irrational number. Other than that, totally up to you. This gender stream was awesome though, but it's 4 hours, so good luck. But anyways, all right, I'm calling it. I will be back tomorrow. We are going to talk more about, if not tomorrow, then definitely more either right after I get married or right before I get married. We're going to talk about the moral implications of theory of everything and why they are not choices. Like, imagine if protons and neutrons decided not to make atoms. Would you exist? I'll leave it at that. But thank you, everyone. This was great as usual. Please hit the like button and go to my website, and at the bottom of the homepage, subscribe to my email list, because they will eventually kick us off as we start discussing moral issues. They definitely will start censoring us. But I will not spam you, but at least you can follow the work to a different platform. Also, if you want to join our Discord, message me on Instagram and I will send you a link to our Discord. And every Thursday at 7 p.m. we have a live call And then follow me on Clubhouse and follow the Theory of Everyone, I guess, club on Clubhouse. And on Mondays at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we're going to be discussing the theory of everything. Again, we did it yesterday and it was awesome. So that will continue. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.